Not invited to this press conference.
It's a historic moment. I run the only black news outlet in town, me and my team, and this is a public space, and we should be able to cover a public event.
It's open to media only,
And we are media. We're registered with the state of Ohio.
not established media.
Established. Can you explain what established media is?
Happy to have this conversation.
I've tried calling your office to have it multiple times, and you have not answered.
That doesn't change the fact.
So what is established media, please?
That's a conversation for another day.
So you won't take my phone calls or communications. You are Robin, but you won't explain what established media is. And we are established by law here in the state of Ohio.
Sorry.
All right. Thank you. Awesome.
Getting shut out of the press conference of the historic press conference, that is, of a black female chief being shut out of being named police chief here in Columbus, and me and the UnBossed network and my crew being shut out of the press conference. That was Assistant Public Safety Director Glenn McIntyre. Now, let me explain to you a little bit about Glenn and who he is. Glenn assumed this role of Assistant Public Safety Director of Communications not even a full year ago in July, shortly after the protests broke out. He assumed that job. Prior to that, he was a reporter just like myself, for WBNS 10 TV. So for a corporate media outlet, WBNS 10 TV, for all intents and purposes, is no longer and hasn't been owned for the past 3.5, going on 4 years now, by the Wolf family. WBNS 10 TV is now owned by Tanga Media, and that is a national corporate media, what I like to call conglomerate, that owns multiple different media outlets, local media outlets around the country. He really, in that exchange, didn't offer an apology. He didn't offer a reason to why we were being shut out. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not the first time it happened. This is just the first time our cameras was rolling to catch it. This is more like the third time that this has happened. The second time it happened, or the time before this, was when our Princess Micaiah Bryant was killed. On the night that she was killed, they had a press conference at 11 o'clock where they released body cam footage. We were not allowed in that, and we were giving in that press conference, and we were given the same reason. Now, we were not allowed in that press conference because, for those of you who have been following the UnBossed network, you will notice and know that we released an investigative story that we have been working on for weeks here at the network. It was a team effort. We have released an investigative story about how Deputy Chief Jennifer Knight is not only racist, but she is corrupt, and how she has multiple lawsuits naming her right now within court. It's simple as that. And then the reason why she is corrupt, to give you all a little bit more explanation, just to give you one reason, because I don't want to get off point from this historic moment and occasion on tonight, is that on the record, in a deposition, she stated to counsel that she took out a little over 100 pages, close to 200 pages, from a 300-page internal affairs report, because she didn't think the chief needed to hear and read all of that information, or care to know all of that information. If that doesn't spell out corrupt, I don't know what does. And so we lied out all of that, and we presented the case, multiple cases and instances, in fact, about not only how she was corrupt, but also about how she's a part of the systemic racism and the systemic culture within the division right now. So we detailed all of that in that investigative report, and so we weren't allowed into that press conference when Micaiah Bryant was killed. Now, for about up until mid-February, we were getting all of the appropriate notifications of when press conferences were going to be, where they were going to be at, and so on, from not only Andy Ginther's office, but also from the public safety director's office as well. Now, let me tell you why this is important and why it's not just me throwing a bitch fit and saying this is wrong, this is wrong. This is important because in America, we have a free press. In America, we have a constitutional right to a free press. The First Amendment says and gives us the freedom of press, the freedom of speech. So if you don't like the press coverage you're getting, and I say this to anybody, because on this network, and me personally, I have a philosophy. And here on this show, all the producers that work on this show, they keep in mind the philosophy that I have. And the philosophy that I have is if you do good, we're going to talk about you. If you do bad, we're going to talk about you. Whatever you do, we're going to talk about you because that's our job. So, Mayor Andy Ginther, what I need you to realize is that the facts are the facts. And because your department has so much systemic racism in it and so much corruption within it, we're doing our job by reporting it and letting the community know about it. That's our fundamental job. And my job is not to kiss your ass and to report on stories that you want to hear about. That's not my job. That might be their job at Channel 4, 610, and at the Dispatch, but here on this network, it's not my job, and it's not any of the producers or the reporters' jobs or any of the show hosts' jobs to do that. I need you to understand that. But what I also need you all to understand is that we were taken off the mayor's press listserv in mid-February when I received a personal call on a Friday afternoon shortly after 12. And myself and the Deputy Chief of Staff for Communication, Robin Davis. Let me tell you a little bit about Robin Davis before being named Deputy Chief of Staff of Communications for Andy Ginther. Robin Davis was a food reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. A food reporter, and all of a sudden, she's now in politics, managing all of these media outlets and inquiries and requests and things. A food reporter. I'm not talking down or bad about any of her credentials in the media, but I'm just stating fact because you all should know the facts. So now, not only was she a food reporter prior to this, but I took the call with her mid-February. I believe it was sometime around February 16th or the 17th. And while we were talking on the phone, and she did call on behalf of the mayor's office because I had reached out to her for several weeks asking and wondering why we had been taking off the city's press serve. Because I wanted to know. I'm like, we can't fundamentally do our job and report out information that needs to be reported out on if we aren't getting the information relayed to us. And now we have to do extra work. And the extra work we have to do is putting in public records requests. And you all drag your feet on the public records requests that we put out and put in to your prospective offices because, hey, you have the right to do that. But not only that, because you don't want us to do our jobs because in your eyes, we don't do favorable press reporting. So put in many calls to Robin's office and emails as well. Finally, she calls back. Calls me shortly after 12 on this day. And I pick up the phone and we are speaking with one another. And she says a few different things. The first thing she says is, Devontae, the UnBossed network is an advocacy outlet. The UnBossed network is not only an advocacy outlet, but you only cover protests. You aren't a real journalist. Robin, I got news for you. I've been a journalist for 13 years. I've been reporting on more real news since before you ever became a food reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. I'm sorry, honey. The shit you're doing right now, it ain't news. You reporting on food and giving out food recipes, it ain't news. I've been reporting on more real news and breaking more real news in my short lifetime and in my short career of 13 years as a journalist than you have in your entire life. I'm sorry, the facts are the facts. And if you want me to bring the receipts, I can bring the receipts to you. So not only did she say we were an advocacy outlet and we only reported on protests, but when I tried to explain to her what the black press was and why black media is important, she didn't want to hear that. And I said, Robin, wait a minute. Do you even know in your capacity as the communications director who and what the UnBossed network stands on the shoulders of? Do you understand who black and what black media outlets were prior to us coming to town? She said, no. So I tried to educate her, y'all. I tried to educate her. I tried to educate Kate, the Karen, because at the end of the day, that's what she is. She's a Karen. So I tried to educate her, and I told her, I'm like, look, you need to go look up the Chicago Defender. Not only do you need to go research the Chicago Defender, but the Pittsburgh Courier. Now, if we want to bring it more local, you need to go do your research, baby, on the Call-In Post. The Call-In Post. The UnBossed network is no different than the Call-In Post was back in the day. No different. And to many of you who don't know, there was another black media outlet prior to the Call-In Post called the Columbus Sentinel. We are no different than those two black media outlets prior to us. We're doing nothing but picking up the void from where our ancestors dropped off in 2014. We're doing nothing but picking up and filling that void and reporting on the news from a black perspective, being the voice for Black Columbus. And not just being the voice for Black Columbus, but we are also being the voice of all those forgotten communities out there. But not just that. After I tried to explain to her the importance of black media and all of that, I said, look, you've allowed Andy to go on Roland Martin a few times now. Roland Martin does and speaks and presents the news the same way we do here on the UnBossed network. She didn't want to hear that. So we progressed the conversation on. And for those of you all wondering, I did keep my cool. I was shocked that I kept my cool, but in the midst of the conversation, I'm not going to lie. I was like, look, we're about to call Zach Klein up right now on his cell phone, and we are going to get Zach Klein on the phone with my attorney and the four of us, and we're going to work something out today. Ended up not calling Zach, but that's what I said, and I'm being fully transparent in everything that took part on this call. So now, after that, in the middle of that call, she said, look, Devontae, you guys are no different than Tom Susie. No different than Tom Susie. To anybody that knows me and who has been watching the Unbought and Unbossed show for quite some time, you know I wanted to go through that phone and snatch that. Just wanted to snatch her neck. Because how the fuck are we like Tom Susie Investigates here on this network? How the fuck are we? I report more real news in a day than Tom Susie reports. Tom Susie is an independent journalist here in the city. But right now, I technically don't consider Tom as an investigative or even an independent reporter, because Tom, unlike us here in this network, he spent his own money to go out and get a puppet made of Andy. While it may be hilarious, I do the news and I don't have time or money or energy to waste on getting a puppet made of the mayor. I could care two shits less about that. I could care two shits less about the mayor's golf game. I'm just saying, I'm just stating what the facts are. And I said, how in the world are you calling us and relating us to Tom Susie? And relating me. I said, I take personal offense to that, Robin. I said, what you just said, and I called her out on it, is a racist comment. And you don't even know that. how derogatory that comment and that remark was. She didn't even offer an apology, but doesn't matter. Secondly, we pushed the conversation a little bit further. And she said, well, Devontae, the reason why, because if any of you know me, you know I'm not going to stop questioning and pushing, sort of like I was in that exchange with Glenn McIntyre today. I kept pushing her. And I said, so, Robin, what's going to give? You need to put us back on that list. You need to put us back on that list. And she said, not going to happen. And then she went into talking about how her and the mayor are reimagining what media looks like. And this took the cake. They're reimagining what media looks like. Isn't that what y'all's former president Trump tried to do? Reimagine what media looks like, and was shutting out outlets because he didn't like the press coverage he was getting from the media? Isn't that what he did? So when she told me that, I said, Robin, so how are you reimagining what media looks like? And you haven't had any of the media executives at the table here locally that run local outlets here at the table to engage in a dialogue with you about how to reimagine what media looks like. And I waited on a response. And I said, Robin, that's where you're wrong. You can't be reimagining what media looks like if you don't have media execs at the table, because you aren't in the media business anymore. Remember that? You're our political for the city of Columbus. I pay your salary, Robin. My tax dollars does, and every viewer who is watching and every listener who is listening right now to this podcast and to this show, we pay your salaries. We pay your salary, Robin. So because we pay your salary, you not only work for us, but you are no longer in the media business. So how do you have all of the answers when it comes to what media looks like in 2021? What media looks like? Here, let me educate you all. And somebody tag the mayor and all the city council reps in this for me right now. And Shannon Hart and all of them, Elizabeth Brown, all of them. They all need to hear this. How can you, and tag Robin Davis to this too, and Glenn McIntyre. Share this with them, email it to them. How can you be reimagining what media looks like without having independent media at the table? Because, baby, I got news for you. Most people aren't consuming their news from a TV anymore. Most people don't even have cable boxes in their house anymore. They have Roku, they have Apple TV, they have Fire Stick. Most people consume their news, if I'm being totally honest, from Facebook and YouTube. That's why we run here at the UnBossed Network. That's why our parent company is a multi-communication, multi-platform media company. Because we communicate with the people where they are. We meet our audience where they are, and they are watching the show on devices like this. They are watching the show on Rukus. They are watching the show on Chromecast. That's how they're consuming the news. But yet you're reimagining what media looks like and not having all the appropriate players at the table. You're dead wrong on that. But let me play a clip from you today, because I was thinking to myself a little while ago about how can we change this culture. Not only how can we change this, but because it's not only happening to me too, but I can name a couple other independent media outlets that this is happening to as well. But let me play a clip from Andy today at the press conference when he was speaking about how we can root out systemic racism and bring about a change. And then we're going to come back and talk about that.
Members of the division and their interactions with the public. Those are facts. And so it's critically important, I think, as a community, that we understand that we can only change something once we acknowledge it exists. And so I didn't want that moment to pass without calling that out for exactly what it is.
So y'all heard Andy say that we can only change something once we acknowledge it exists. So today I stood in the rain for almost a little over an hour today. Stood in the rain, pouring down rain downtown. I did a live about it on my personal page. In the pouring rain, waiting to talk to the mayor because Andy said, and y'all just heard him, that the only way we can change something is if we admit it. So we need him to admit that he has a problem with the black press. And let me state something to y'all. Let me clear something up for y'all. I need you all to understand this. There is a difference in black journalists being in a room versus the black press being in the room. That's all I'm going to say about that subject because I'm going to talk more about that when we cover our next story.